Okay, guys, let's talk parabolas. Okay, parabolas is one of those things that we have, like, it feels like we've talked about them forever. You had them in math 2, probably again in math 3, and now you're getting them in this class. But we're going to start talking about them in a different way. Okay, so when we were in first semester, okay, we talked about the vertex form of the parabola. Okay, I will discuss the diagrams in a moment, so just ignore those for now. So it was y equals a x minus h squared plus k. Okay, so let's remind ourselves what each thing told us. Okay, a told us if there was a x-axis reflection, and that's if we saw a negative. Okay, it told us a vertical stretch, or compress or shrink, depending on the word that you prefer. Okay, H told us a horizontal shift, okay, so if you had a negative H, you went right H units. If you had a positive H, you went left H units. Okay, excuse me. K, K told you a vertical shift. Okay, so if you had positive K, you went up K units. If you had a negative K, you went down K units. All right. And then you also got some other information. So let's say I said, hey, what's the vertex? You would say, hey, Mrs. Harris, my vertex is HK. If I wanted to know the axis of symmetry, you'd say x equals h. Okay, so that's how we used to do with parabolas. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about parabolas in a kind of a geometric sense. You're very used to talking about them in the algebraic sense. Now, this vertex form of the parabola doesn't change very much. The biggest thing that's going to change is this a. Okay, and we're going to move things around just to be kind of annoying. Okay, all right. So it turns out, now we're going to look at figure 1, okay, that if I select points on a parabola, okay, the distance between the point and a point called the focus and the directrix will be the same, okay? So this point right here, these two are the same, okay, believe it or not, okay? These two are the same. So we have this point called the focus. Okay, oh, they already wrote that down, so I don't need to write that in again. Okay, and then we have this line called the directrix. Okay, that's very important. Okay, now when we talk about this new geometric definition, okay, let's put some actual numbers in there. Okay, so let's say this distance, we choose a point on the parabola. Okay, and then we measure the distance from that point to the focus, and let's say we get 4. Okay, and then we turn around and we measure perpendicularly to the line at directrix. We're also going to get 4. Okay, If we choose another point, x1 or x2, y2, let's say we get 3. Well, this distance right here will be 3. Okay, this diagram is a little bit off scale, okay, but the distances from the focus to the parabola and then the parabola to the line of the directrix are going to be equal, okay. Now, the most important point we have here is called P, okay. P is very special. P is the distance from the vertex to the focus point, and it is also the distance from the vertex to the directrix line. Okay, now, couple of things to know. One, if you can count, you can graph a parabola. Okay, it's not that bad. It just takes a while to get used to it because you're so used to this guy right here. Okay, now, so another thing to realize, and this is really, really important, so I write it in red. The parabola always surrounds the focus. I know that's not a very mathematical way to think about it, okay, but it's always going to go around the focus like it's giving it a big hug, okay. And then the parabola will always go away from the directrix line. Okay. Okay, another thing to know, whoopsie. All right, the directrix line and the axis of symmetry are always perpendicular. So they're going to form a T. Okay. So the tricky bit with this, okay, is we have our standard form or vertex form from first semester. Okay, which looks like this. Okay, now we get a new one. Now, for whatever reason, and I don't know why, people like to mess with this one. Math teachers do it, Edgenuity does it. Okay, but I'm just going to rewrite for a moment. Okay, so you'll notice that A is replaced by 1 over 4p. Okay, so that can make things a little confusing because you see a fraction and you kind of flip out, but depending on what the fraction is, your life could be easy or it could be kind of confusing. Okay, now, I told you that people messed with these. Okay, so the most important thing to remember is the 1 over 4p is always next to a squared. Okay, but then, because, we're kind of evil math teachers, people will start rearranging things. So you could see it written like this. Okay, notice that the y is next to the k now. So when you do the up and down move, it is now opposite, kind of like the h. Okay, another thing that they'll do, and this is slightly weird, at least to me, is they'll do this. Because people don't like fractions. Okay, so if you're next to the square parenthesis, it's 1 over 4p. If you're next to the linear parenthesis, it's 4 times p. Okay, this can make your life a little confusing. Now, so let's talk about p. Go back up here. Now remember, p is the distance from the vertex to the focus point and the vertex to the directrix line. Okay, now what's going to help us graph, and let me get rid of some of this stuff here. Okay, is if we do what's called the width of the parabola, right here. Okay, this is 2 times p, 2 times p. So the width of the parabola we say is 4 times p. Okay, so let's just try this out. Okay, there's no other way to do it. Let's just try it out because this looks like a crud load of information. It's very confusing. There's going to be a couple different videos on this because you can switch the direction of your parabola now. Okay, so let's try one. Okay, so you're going to tell me direction of the opening. You're going to tell me where the vertex is. You're going to tell me what p is equal to. You're going to tell me where the focus point is. You're going to tell me what the axis of symmetry is. And you're going to tell me what the directrix line is. Okay, so now let's give you an equation. Okay, so you'll notice that I wrote it in this form. So this right here is equal to 4p. So that means p is equal to 2. Okay, we're going to use that in a second. Okay, now looking at what next to y, we have a negative 2. That means, since it's in parentheses, that I'm actually going to move 2 up from 0, 0. All right, right here, next to the x, that's a positive 3. So I'm actually going to move 3 left. Okay, so my vertex is negative 3, 2. Now, if you have the vertex, you have the axis of symmetry. Okay, now let's talk about direction of opening before we talk about axis of symmetry. Okay, notice who's squared here. X is squared. So that tells you that you open up or you open down. Now, if we look at our value here, our 4p value, This is a positive value, so we know we open up. Now, this is going to sound kind of dumb, but it helps. I usually tell students to draw a little tiny parabola that opens up so they know where everything is supposed to be. Okay, so if I open up, that means my axis of symmetry is going to be an x value. So x is equal to -3. Now I'm doing all of this without graphing, which can be kind of difficult. Okay, so now I'm going to move to a graph. Okay, I'm doing this by hand. Okay, and again, if you want to check your answer, you can totally do Desmos. Desmos won't tell you the p-value or the focus or the directrix. Okay, all right, here we go. So first thing I do is I graph the vertex. So -3, 2. And I'm going to put a little v by there. Let me zoom in. Okay, so now I know this parabola opens up. Okay, so what I'm going to do to find my focus, I'm going to count up p. Up 2 because p is 2. 1, 2. There is my focus point. Now I get to write down where my focus point is. That is at -3, 4. Okay, now I get to find my directrix line. Okay, so I go back to my focus and count the opposite direction. So I'm going to count down. Okay, 1, 2. And then I'm going to make a line that's perpendicular to my axis of symmetry. So this is my directrix. Okay, my directrix is y equals 0. Okay, hot tip, the axis of symmetry and the directrix will always be opposites. So if one of them's x, the other one's y, and vice versa, but we'll get to that. Okay, now let's talk about graphing the parabola. So we are very used to doing a t-chart, counting steps, up 1/1, up 3/1, or vertical stretch or compress. This one's actually easier. So what you're going to do, let's go back to our diagram. Okay, remember on either side of our focus point, we have 2p. So on either side of my focus point, I'm going to count out 2 times p, or 2 times 2, which is 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, on either side of the focus, not the vertex. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to connect my vertex and my 2 points. And then I am done. And that's it. Okay? So this is P, P, 2P, 2P. Okay? And that's it. Okay? It's a lot easier. Once you get used to it, it does go a bit faster. So we're going to do one more like this. And then in the next video, there are going to be a couple of them. We'll do side to side. Okay? All right, here we go. Let's do another one. Whoa, hello. Get back to where I want to be. Okay. So I'm going to change it up now. This one might be a little difficult. Okay, now, if you look, okay, this looks more like what we're used to, right? Actually, let's change that. Let's make it negative, just to be fun. Okay, so it looks like that guy. Okay, so the number in front is equal to 1/4p. Okay, So let's just take a look at my equation here. Okay, so looking at my equation, I can tell you that since this is a negative lead, okay, it opens downward. So let's go with like this. Okay, and I know since this letter A, this A value is in front of the x squared, I know that negative 2/5 is equal to 1 over 4p. Okay, all right, so let's just try it out. Okay, so vertex, all right, that would be right 3 down 2. Going a little faster. Axis of symmetry is going to be an x value. All right. Okay, now let's solve for p. We're going to cross multiply. So we get negative 8p over 5 equals 5, excuse me. So p is equal to negative 5/8. Okay, so we're going to kind of ignore the negative. Okay. So this is going to be a little hard to count. Okay, but we can do it. So p, we're going to say 5/8 because it's a distance. Okay, and then we're going to find the focus and the directrix. Okay, let's work on graphing. And I'm going to show you like a way to accurately find points on this as well. Okay. Okay, I'm going to zoom in. Okay, where was my vertex? 3 to negative 2. Okay. Okay, so my vertex was 3, negative 2. So there's my. Okay, so since my parabola opens down, my focus will be downwards from my vertex. Okay, so I'm going to count 5/8, which is like literally like a little bit over half. So my focus is right here. Okay, focus. And then I'm going to go, directrix is going to be up. Okay. And again, this is going to be kind of a rough graph because you're dealing with fractions. Okay, there's my directrix. And I'm going to show you how to accurately find those. Okay. Now I'm going to count out my width. So 2 times 5/8 is 10/8, which is about 1 1/4. We're estimating, or 1.2. Okay, so we're going to go 1, and then just a little bit tiny, 1, and then a little bit more, and then we're going to connect. Okay, remember that you're sketching, it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so now let's talk about how are we going to find out those particular values. So remember you counted down from your vertex to your focus. So what did you change? You changed a y value by negative 5/8. So what you're going to do for your focus, x value stays the same. Your y value, you're going to go minus 5/8. Okay, so your directrix, okay, you counted up, so you're going to change the y. So it's going to be y equals negative 2 plus 5/8. So that's your down, that's your up. Okay, so let's get out a calculator because it's too early to do fractions. So negative 2 minus 5 divided by 8. And I'm going to change that to a fraction. Okay, so 3, negative 21 over 8. There's your focus. For your directrix. Your directrix would be y is equal to negative 11 over 8. Okay? All right, now, again, this is a lot of fractions, but it was just counting. Okay? Just counting. All right? Not too bad, I hope. Okay, the next video, we're going to deal with parabolas that go side to side. Okay? All right, thank you for watching.